Black woman slept on the plane until the captain asked, terrified, "Any fighter pilot on board?" Night draped Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in a curtain of silver lights and restless echoes. The late evening crowd moved like a tired river through the terminal, pulling suitcases that rattled across polished floors. Gate B12 glowed at the end of the concourse, its announcement boards flickering the words, "London, on time." Inside the jet bridge, passengers shuffled forward, shoulders brushing as they filed toward the open door of the plane. Yawns and muffled phone calls floated through the air, a symphony of fatigue and impatience. Among the flow of bodies stepped Maya Johnson. She wore a simple gray hoodie and dark jeans, nothing to betray the storms she had once commanded above the clouds. Her headphones rested loosely around her neck, the faint hum of jazz barely audible. A duffel bag slung across her shoulder bore a small, worn patch of the U.S. Air Force, but few noticed. A flight attendant greeted each traveler with a mechanical smile. "Welcome aboard." "Row 22 is to your left." Maya offered a polite nod, eyes steady yet distant. The sharp-eyed might have caught the quiet authority in her stride, the way she moved with precise balance, even as the floor vibrated beneath impatient feet. Most passengers, however, were too consumed by their own weariness to look twice. In first class, a businessman adjusted his cufflinks and whispered to his companion, "Red-eye flights always bring interesting company." His glance drifted briefly toward Maya, then away, dismissing her as just another economy traveler. Row by row, voices rose and fell. An elderly couple complained about the late boarding time. A college student argued softly with a flight attendant about overhead space. Subtle layers of class and privilege hung in the recycled air, unnoticed but present like static in a radio signal. Maya reached her window seat and slid her bag beneath the seat in one practiced motion. As she buckled her belt, the cabin lights caught a faint network of scars along the back of her right hand. They shimmered like ghostly lightning, reminders of nights when steel and fire had been her companions. She flexed her fingers once, a silent ritual of control. The camera of imagination drifts inward, peeling back the quiet exterior. Memories flicker like flashes of lightning across her mind. A roaring F-16 slicing through a copper desert sky. The weightless silence before a missile locks onto its target. The crackling voice of a squad leader saying, "Sometimes courage means walking away." Maya's jaw tightened, but she forced a breath through her chest and focused on the gentle buzz of the cabin. The Air Force had been her life until one classified mission changed everything. She had left with honor, but also with questions that sleep never fully answered. A toddler in the next row peeked over the seat, wide-eyed. Maya offered a faint smile. The child giggled, breaking the tension like a soft cord in a dark room. Across the aisle, a young man noticed the Air Force patch on her bag and whispered to his girlfriend, "Think she's a pilot?" The girlfriend shrugged, eyes flicking to the businessman in first class, who was already ordering a drink. The captain's voice floated through the speakers. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard Flight 302 to London Heathrow. Estimated flight time is 7 hours, 20 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride." Engines rumbled beneath the floor as the plane taxied toward the runway. Maya leaned her head against the cool window. Beyond the glass, runway lights stretched like a necklace of blue stars across the dark tarmac. The roar of takeoff came like a memory she knew by heart. Thrust, lift, the trembling surge that pressed passengers into their seats. While others clutched armrests, Maya's breathing slowed, syncing with the rhythm of the engines. For a moment she was back in the cockpit of her fighter jet, night sky yawning open before her, the universe vast and fragile all at once. She closed her eyes. Jazz hummed softly through her headphones, blending with the steady hum of turbines. The arguments, the whispers, the clinking of drink carts faded into a single heartbeat of calm. As the plane leveled above a sea of clouds, moonlight spilled across her face, carving silver lines across her cheekbones. She allowed the vibration of flight to cradle her, half dream, half vigilance. Somewhere behind her, the businessman muttered about real pilots, his words sharp enough to cut but too faint to pierce her serenity. Maya didn't flinch. The sky had taught her long ago that altitude exposes truth and renders prejudice small. The engines purred a lullaby only she could fully understand. Slowly, the fatigue of endless days on the ground claimed her. Her breathing deepened. Her shoulders softened. Sleep, at last, began to pull her into its quiet tide. No one, watching, could guess that beneath the calm. Exterior rested a warrior trained to dance with danger at 40,000 feet. The cabin settled into midnight stillness. Passengers cocooned in private dreams. Only the distant rumble of jet engines hinted at the vast ocean below. And as Maya drifted into slumber, a silent question hovered in the pressurized air. Who is this woman who carries the quiet weight of command? And what storm might soon call her back? The plane climbed steadily into the dark Atlantic sky, engines humming with the quiet certainty of 1,000 flights before it. Cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, casting long shadows across rows of drowsy passengers. Outside the windows, a velvet blanket of clouds drifted beneath the silver moon, serene and endless. Maya Johnson's head tilted slightly against the cold glass, her breathing even. To anyone passing by, she looked peacefully asleep. But inside her mind, the night was anything but gentle. The soft whir of the jet engines transformed in her dream, swelling into the thunderous roar of afterburners. In an instant, she was back inside the narrow cockpit of an F-16 fighter jet, helmet clamped tight, oxygen mask sealing her breath. Red warning lights flashed across her instrument panel, painting her gloved hands in crimson. The world outside was a smear of speed, desert sands far below, a horizon split by heat and fire. "Johnson, maintain altitude," barked the voice of her squadron leader through the headset. "Copy!" she shouted back, her own voice trembling beneath the controlled calm of training. The jet pitched sharply as she executed a defensive roll. G-forces pinned her to the seat, chest compressed by invisible weights. Missiles streaked across the night sky like shooting stars, deadly, beautiful. Then came the order. A target locked, a decision no one should have to make. "Engage!" the commander's voice demanded. Her finger hovered over the trigger, but hesitation flared. A civilian vehicle had entered the perimeter, too close, too fast. Her instincts screamed caution. Her duty demanded action. A deafening silence filled the headset. Then the voice returned, softer but edged with finality. "Sometimes courage means walking away." She pulled back, aborting the strike. The mission unraveled in chaos, and though lives were spared, the operation failed. The fallout ended her career. Commendation and quiet exile delivered in the same envelope. In the dream, guilt pressed harder than gravity. The roar of engines became the pounding of her own heart. She gripped the joystick tighter, the memory of choice burning like acid. A sudden ding of the cabin seatbelt sign snapped her eyes open. The fighter jet dissolved into the dim interior of Flight 302. Her palms were damp against the armrest. For a heartbeat, she half expected to see a canopy of stars rushing past at Mach speed. Instead, there was only the gentle murmur of passengers and the soft flicker of reading lights. Reality, however, carried its own turbulence. 2 rows ahead, a man in a tailored suit argued with a flight attendant over a seat upgrade. His voice sliced through the quiet. "I paid for comfort," he said sharply. "I don't sit next to backpacks like that." His eyes flicked briefly toward Maya's duffel bag with the small Air Force patch. The glance was quick but heavy, a silent judgment layered with unspoken prejudice. The attendant's polite tone held a firm edge. "Sir, please remain in your assigned seat." The businessman muttered something about standards and turned away, but his words left a residue of tension that settled like static across the cabin. A child began to cry 3 rows back, his mother rocking him gently while murmuring apologies to irritated neighbors. A college student struggled to wedge an oversized bag into the overhead compartment, earning pointed sighs from those around her. Each minor conflict seemed to pulse in rhythm with the plane's engines, a quiet reminder of how easily fear and privilege can flare at 30,000 feet. Maya sat motionless, eyes fixed on the small oval window. Beyond the glass stretched an infinite ocean of stars, distant and cold. She pressed her forehead against the pane, feeling the faint vibration of the jet through her skin. Her reflection stared back, strong yet weary. A soldier turned civilian who had traded battlefields for boarding gates. She thought of the words that haunted her dreams. Sometimes courage means walking away. Walking away had saved her soul, but left her restless. She had fled the endless demand for heroism, choosing anonymity over adrenaline. Yet the night sky still called to her like an old comrade, whispering promises of purpose she pretended not to hear. The child's cries quieted. The businessman finally reclined in silence. The cabin returned to a fragile calm. Maya closed her eyes again, forcing slow breaths, steadying the rhythm of her heart. But destiny, like the jet stream outside, was already shifting course. Somewhere in the black expanse ahead, a storm was forming, one that would soon test every reason she had for leaving the sky behind. She didn't know it yet, but the night was only beginning to climb. 2 hours into the long night. Flight 302 cruised smoothly over the Atlantic. The cabin was a cradle of muted dreams. Passengers dozed beneath thin blankets. Headphones whispered soft music, and the steady drone of engines lulled the restless toward sleep. Then, a violent jolt. The aircraft lurched downward without warning. A stomach-dropping plunge that ripped startled screams from every corner of the cabin. Coffee cups toppled, overhead bins rattled like thunder. The once steady hum of engines deepened into a grinding roar. Lights flickered. Once, twice, then dimmed to an ominous red glow, a sharp hiss followed by a pop. Oxygen masks tumbled from the ceiling in a flurry of plastic and dangling cords. The faint scent of burnt circuitry seeped through the recycled air. Gasps sliced the silence. A child wailed. Seatbelts snapped as passengers fumbled for the masks. Hands trembling, breaths quickening. The intercom crackled to life, carrying a voice that should have been calm, but wasn't. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain began, each word uneven, "we are experiencing a critical systems failure. Please remain seated and secure your oxygen masks." A beat of static, then a question that froze the blood of every soul on board. "Is there any fighter pilot on board?" For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. The question hung in the pressurized air like a flare against the dark. Mothers clutched their children closer. A businessman in first class pressed his palms together in frantic prayer. A college student whispered, "Did he say fighter pilot?" Maya's eyes snapped open. The world around her sharpened to a razor's edge, every detail suddenly, painfully clear. Her pulse hammered in her ears, syncing with the flashing emergency lights. She tasted metal on her tongue, the phantom tang of cockpit oxygen. Her body knew the rhythm of crisis long before her mind caught up. "Not again," a voice inside her whispered. "Not after all you left behind." Her chest tightened as if the G-forces of old missions had returned to pin her to the seat. Around her, panic spread like wildfire. "Are we crashing?" someone shouted from the back. "Call the flight attendant," another cried. A baby shrieked as its mother fumbled with the mask, fingers slipping against the rubber straps. The flight attendant nearest Maya staggered down the aisle, eyes wide, scanning the cabin as though salvation might be hiding behind a seat number. Her voice trembled but tried for authority. "Please, if anyone has military or aviation training, please identify yourself." Passengers turned their heads in jerky unison, searching for a savior. Maya remained still, heart thundering. She could almost hear her former squadron leader's words echoing through the chaos. Sometimes courage means walking away. Walking away had cost her career but saved her sanity. She had promised herself never to climb back into the storm. Yet the smell of overheated circuitry dragged her back to 1,000 flight drills. The rhythm of her heartbeat merged with the remembered thrum of engines under stress. Every cell in her body screamed what to do: analyze, assess, act. Across the aisle, the suited businessman who had scoffed at her earlier muttered, "Fighter pilot? On a commercial flight? We're doomed." His words cut through the air like a blade, sharpening the quiet prejudice already simmering beneath the panic. Maya closed her eyes for a single, steadying breath. In that heartbeat, she saw the faces of those she had once saved, and those she could not. Then she opened them, clarity blazing where hesitation had been. The flight attendant reached her row, voice cracking with desperation. "Please, someone, anyone, can you help the cockpit?" Maya unbuckled her seatbelt with a deliberate click. The sound was small, but it carried like a starting gun through the hushed cabin. Heads turned. The businessman's eyes widened, recognition flickering as he caught sight of the faded Air Force patch on her duffel. Maya stood, shoulders squared, her posture suddenly commanding despite the civilian hoodie. Her voice was calm, low, but filled with the quiet power of someone who had once raced the speed of sound. "I can help," she said. For a fraction of a second, the attendant simply stared, as if the answer to an unspoken prayer had materialized from the shadows. Then she nodded quickly, relief flashing across her pale face. "Come with me. Now." Maya stepped into the narrow aisle, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes follow her. Some were hopeful, others skeptical. A few tinged with disbelief that a young black woman in a hoodie could possibly be the hero they needed. She ignored them all. Each step toward the cockpit was a silent war with her past. Memories clawed at her, desert missions, aborted strikes, the echo of failure. But the call of duty was louder. As the attendant led her through the curtain separating first class, the businessman's voice floated after her, half prayer, half plea. "God help us." Maya didn't turn. The door to the cockpit loomed ahead, glowing faintly under the red emergency lights. With one final breath, she crossed the threshold, leaving behind the anonymity she had guarded so fiercely. The woman who once commanded the skies was awake again. The narrow hallway to the cockpit felt longer than a runway. Each step carried the echo of Maya's past, the roar of engines, the split-second decisions that had once defined her life. The trembling flight attendant hurried ahead, glancing back as if afraid this unexpected savior might vanish. The cockpit door opened with a hiss of pressure, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. Warning lights flashed crimson across panels crowded with flickering gauges. The smell of overheated electronics mingled with sharp ozone from the storm outside. Captain Reynolds, a seasoned pilot with salt and pepper hair, sat rigid in his chair, knuckles white against the yoke. His co-pilot frantically tapped keys, eyes darting between dead screens. Sweat glistened on both men despite the chilled cabin air. "Thank God," the attendant gasped, ushering Maya inside. "She's a fighter pilot." Reynolds turned, surprise and raw fear flickering in his eyes. "Are you really Air Force?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice crisp, steady. "What's the status?" The captain pointed to the dark navigation display. "Primary guidance is down. Backup's failing. We're losing altitude, fast. If we can't stabilize, we'll hit the Atlantic in 20 minutes. A shudder ran through the plane as turbulence rocked the fuselage. Lightning flashed beyond the windshield, a jagged spear illuminating a sky swollen with storm clouds. Maya slid into the jump seat beside the co-pilot, eyes scanning the instrument panel with practiced precision. Her fighter pilot instincts kicked in, muscle memory overriding fear. "Hydraulics?" she asked. "Barely holding," the co-pilot replied. "Power distribution?" "Unstable. Every time we reroute, we lose another system." Maya's hands moved like a conductor directing a desperate symphony. "Then isolate the secondary bus and reroute to manual." "I'll monitor altitude drift." Her commands cut through the static-laced radio chatter. Reynolds followed instantly, fingers dancing across switches. The cockpit, moments ago a nest of panic, began to fall into the rhythm of her voice. Outside, thunder cracked like artillery. Sheets of rain lashed the windshield, each drop exploding against the glass like miniature missiles. Through the cracked cockpit door, passengers glimpsed a shadowed figure, Maya outlined against the pulsing lights. Some whispered prayers, others clutched armrests tighter, all drawn to the silhouette of a woman who carried herself with unshakable resolve. Inside, the storm of Maya's past raged even louder. Her mind flickered to a different cockpit. Years ago, when a split-second hesitation had cost a comrade's life. The same alarms, the same flashing red, the same crushing weight of responsibility. Guilt clawed at her chest like a phantom G-force. Johnson, her former squadron leader's voice echoed in memory. Sometimes courage means walking away, but walking away wasn't an option tonight. Hundreds of lives depended on her refusing to let history repeat itself. "Altitude dropping, 600 feet per minute," the co-pilot reported, panic rising again. "Stabilizers to manual," Maya barked. "Captain, you hold the pitch. I'll balance thrust. We ride this storm, not fight it." Reynolds shot her a look of respect. "Copy that." The plane shuddered violently as a fresh gust slammed into its side. Warning alarm screamed. Maya gripped the controls, her voice cutting through the chaos like a steady beacon. "Counter yaw 2 degrees left. Now." Reynolds obeyed. The nose of the aircraft dipped, then steadied. A tremor eased in the yoke. "Good," Maya said, her eyes never leaving the instruments. "We've got this. Stay with me." Another flash of lightning illuminated her face. Calm, focused, every muscle poised for precision. Fear still coiled deep inside, but she refused to let it reach her hands. Minutes stretched like hours. Outside, the Atlantic churned black and endless beneath the storm clouds. Inside, the cabin fell into a tense silence, broken only by the groan of straining metal and the clipped exchange of commands. Reynolds risked a glance at her. "You've done this before. Too many times," Maya replied, her tone flat but weighted with memory. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Whatever happened before?" "You're saving lives tonight." The words cut through her inner storm like a guiding star. The ghosts of her past mission didn't disappear, but their grip loosened. Another alarm blared, a final systems warning. Maya's mind worked faster than fear. Divert remaining power to the inertial reference. "It's all we need to keep level until the storm breaks," she commanded. The co-pilot's fingers flew over the keys. Power diverted. The cockpit trembled, then steadied. The descent slowed. 500 feet per minute, then 300, then holding. Maya exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That's it. We're buying time." Through the half-open door, a child in row 12 whispered, "She's saving us." The words floated forward. Fragile but powerful, Maya kept her focus, but a flicker of warmth lit her chest. This was why she had once loved the sky, not the glory, but the quiet duty of keeping others safe. Lightning flashed one final time, painting the cockpit in silver and shadow. Maya's eyes met Reynolds's, a silent pact passing between them. They were not out of danger, but they were no longer falling helplessly into the sea. Outside, the storm still raged. Inside, a fighter pilot reclaimed the sky she had once fled. The plane groaned like a wounded animal as Maya tightened her grip on the secondary controls. Turbulence hammered the fuselage, each jolt a reminder of how close the Atlantic waited below. The cockpit lights flickered, painting her face in a strobe of red warnings and pale lightning flashes. "Captain, steady pitch at -3, she ordered, her voice sharp but measured. "I'll reroute remaining power to the ailerons." Captain Reynolds nodded, sweat tracing lines down his temple. "Copy that. You call it, I'll follow." Outside, rain lashed the windshield like a spray of bullets, each drop exploding against the reinforced glass. The wipers struggled to keep up, smearing water into streaks that blurred the horizon into a gray, endless void. Another shudder rattled the cabin. Through the half-open door, Maya caught glimpses of wide eyes and pale faces. A businessman clenched his armrests until his knuckles whitened. A woman pressed her forehead to a rosary, lips moving in a frantic prayer. Near the middle rows, a young boy hugged a plastic fighter jet to his chest, a silent salute to the stranger who now carried their fate. Maya's heart clenched. She remembered nights in the desert sky, her own fighter slicing through darkness, trusting only the instruments and the steady cadence of her mentor's voice over the comms. A true pilot trusts the sky but commands it. His words echoed now, stronger than the thunder outside. She checked the gauges, fingers flying across switches. Hydraulic pressures stabilizing. "Captain, increase thrust on engine 2. Slow and steady." "Thrust increasing," Reynolds confirmed. His tone steadier than before. The plane responded with a low groan, nose lifting slightly against the punishing winds. For the first time in what felt like hours, Maya felt the aircraft obey. "You've done this before," Reynolds said quietly, eyes fixed on the instruments. "Not like this," Maya replied, her focus unbroken. "But the principles never change. Control what you can. Trust what you can't." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the cockpit in a sudden flash. The storm seemed almost alive, a living force testing their will. "Altitude holding," the co-pilot announced, disbelief softening his voice. "Descent rate 0. Maya allowed herself a brief exhale. "Good. Let's prepare for landing." "Captain, deploy flaps to 20. Keep our nose level. We ride the airflow, not fight it." Reynolds glanced at her, a flicker of admiration breaking through his exhaustion. "You just saved more lives tonight than most of us ever will." Maya didn't answer. Praise felt hollow when her mind still carried the weight of those she hadn't saved years ago. The memory of a burning desert runway, a wingman's final scream in her headset, tightened her chest like a vice. But this was not the time to dwell on ghosts. The storm roared, one last challenge. Crosswinds buffeted the plane, threatening to tip its massive frame. Maya adjusted controls with surgical precision, countering each gust before it could seize the wings. Every movement was a conversation with the sky, command and response, trust and defiance. "Landing gear," she said. Reynolds flipped the switch. A deep mechanical thud reverberated through the plane as the gear extended. A green light blinked to life on the panel. Gear down and locked, the co-pilot confirmed. Through the door, passengers stirred, sensing the shift. A ripple of cautious hope spread across the cabin. A child's sob quieted. A whispered prayer ended in a shaky sigh. Final approach, Maya instructed. We follow the glide path. Smooth inputs only. The runway lights pierced the storm like distant stars. The Atlantic's black surface gave way to the faint outline of wet asphalt, shimmering through sheets of rain. Touchdown in 30 seconds, Reynolds announced. His voice no longer trembling. Maya kept her eyes on the instruments, guiding the descent with the calm precision of a surgeon. The engines roared against the wind, flaps adjusted to fight the sudden downdrafts. Every second stretched into eternity, then contact. The wheels kissed the runway with a jarring thud. Reverse thrusters engaged, slowing the massive aircraft as it skidded across slick asphalt. The storm howled in protest, but the plane held firm. A beat of silence followed. Then came the sound. Cheers, sobs, gasps of disbelief. A collective breath released across the cabin, as if hundreds of lungs had been holding it for the same impossible moment. Maya remained still, hands resting on the controls, eyes scanning the panel. Only when the engines powered down did she allow herself to lean back. Relief flooded her body, mingled with the bittersweet ache of memory. Reynolds turned to her, his expression equal parts gratitude and awe. You brought us home, Maya managed a faint smile. We brought us home. Beyond the windshield, the storm began to break, clouds parting to reveal a slice of moonlit sky. Inside, passengers hugged strangers, tears mingling with laughter. Yet Maya sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the fading storm. She had saved hundreds tonight, but the ghosts of those she'd lost remained. The sky had tested her and, for now, she had answered. The tires screeched against the slick runway, a final echo of the night's chaos fading into the damp morning air. Blue and red emergency lights flashed along the tarmac, reflecting off the plane's rain-streaked windows like restless stars. Inside the cabin, passengers unbuckled with trembling fingers. Their relief palpable, some laughing through tears, others sitting in stunned silence as the reality of survival settled in. Captain Reynolds' voice crackled over the intercom, warm, yet weighted with emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London Heathrow. We owe our safe arrival to more than luck tonight. Please remain seated until the crew gives instructions. His words hinted at the truth but revealed nothing of the quiet figure seated halfway down the aisle. Maya Johnson sat motionless, hood pulled low, watching passengers collect their belongings. Her hands rested on her knees, steady now, though the smell of burnt circuitry still lingered in her memory. She felt no need for applause. The night sky had tested her, and the answer was its own reward. The aisle filled with the shuffle of feet and the creak of overhead bins. A businessman wiped his brow, murmuring to his neighbor about divine intervention. A mother clutched her sleeping child, whispering thanks to angels. None of them knew that the angel had been seated just a few rows away, disguised as an ordinary traveler. As Maya reached for her backpack, a small hand tugged gently at her sleeve. She turned to find the boy with the plastic fighter jet, the one who had clutched it like a lifeline during the storm. His eyes were wide but steady. "You're the pilot, aren't you?" he asked in a voice barely louder than the hum of the cooling engines. The question hung in the air, soft yet piercing, cutting through the layers of anonymity Maya had carefully wrapped around herself. For a heartbeat she considered denying it, but the boy's gaze carried the quiet certainty of someone who had already seen the truth. Maya smiled, the corners of her lips lifting with a mixture of pride and humility. "I used to be," she said gently. The boy nodded as if the answer confirmed something he'd always believed. "I knew it," he whispered, clutching his toy plane closer. A nearby passenger overheard and turned, eyes widening. Whispers spread like a spark, catching dry grass. Heads turned. A woman placed a tentative hand over her mouth, recognition dawning. "It's her," someone murmured. "She helped in the cockpit." Within moments, a ripple of gratitude moved through the cabin. Passengers who had passed Maya earlier without a glance now offered hesitant smiles and quiet words of thanks. Some clasped her hand as they filed past, their faces lit with the fragile glow of newfound respect. Before the last row had disembarked, The intercom came alive once more. Captain Reynolds's voice carried a steadiness born of admiration. "Before you leave, I'd like to acknowledge someone extraordinary. Tonight, a fighter pilot saved us all. Please join me in thanking Maya Johnson." Applause erupted, warm and uneven, filling the narrow cabin with a sound that was both celebration and catharsis. Maya stood awkwardly, offering a small nod. Her heart swelled at the recognition, but she remained rooted in quiet humility. Heroism, she knew, was never about the spotlight. It was about the choice to act when fear demanded stillness. When the doors finally opened, a cool dawn breeze swept into the cabin, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and the faint sweetness of morning rain. Outside, reporters clustered near the terminal, cameras poised to capture the story of the miraculous landing. Microphones bristled like spears, ready to pierce the anonymity she wore like armor. Maya adjusted her backpack and slipped into the stream of passengers. She kept her head low, hood drawn, weaving through the crowd before the reporters could spot her. No interviews. No headlines. Only the soft rhythm of her footsteps against the waking earth. Beyond the terminal doors, the first light of day stretched across the horizon, turning the soaked runway into a sheet of silver. Maya paused at the curb, watching a plane lift into the brightening sky. For a moment, the engine's distant roar carried her back to desert nights and lost comrades. To the ghosts she had faced and finally, perhaps, forgiven. She exhaled, the breath carrying both relief and quiet triumph. The storm was behind her, but the lesson lingered, etched not in accolades, but in action. Heroes don't wait for recognition. The narration would later remind those who heard her story. They answer the call when fear tells everyone else to sit still. With a faint, knowing smile, Maya stepped into the breaking dawn, her silhouette blending into the crowd. An ordinary woman who had once again proven that greatness often travels incognito, waiting only for the moment when courage becomes destiny.